Another day, another dollar. You might not think money is something to sing and dance about, but don't worry, that's why I'm here. I'm Julie Beckham, the financial educator at Rockland Trust, and this is Behind the Curtain, Money Made Simple, the podcast that takes the mystery out of money and puts the spotlight on your financial life. If you've ever felt behind, confused, or just totally overwhelmed when it comes to your finances, you are not alone. In fact, you're part of a cast of thousands. So take your seat and silence your phones as we pull back the curtain on personal finance.
It's so fun because, I'm just going to pull back the curtain on how this kind of situation ended up happening. Suzanne just sent me an email, and she sent me an email talking about the documents that 18-year-olds need to have when going off to college or living their life, maybe in a different state growing up. And, she said, do you have some information? Do you have educational things on this? And I said, well, not specifically, but do you want to be the education on this? Do you want to come on my podcast? So I do want to just tell people that, if you have an idea, send me an email because this is how it happens. It's right here. So Suzanne is a graduate of Suffolk University Law School. She's a partner at SKB Attorneys, and she's been practicing law since 2003. Mm-hmm. So that's a long time. You've been doing this a while.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited to have you here because, let me just explain to those of you who maybe aren't parents or are parents of young kids. You do all the things, right? 18 years, you cover all the outlets. You say careful when they're climbing the monkey bars. You buy the helmets and all the things to protect them. And then this crazy thing happens. You drop them off and they're 18 years old and either they're in another city, starting a new job, they're learning a trade, they're at a university or college, and you don't have any rights anymore. So tell me about that, Suzanne.
I've done estate planning since 2003, but just really recently I've focused on young adults, probably because my kids are now 18 and 20, and they knew the day they turned 18, they were going to have their documents for them to sign. But most young adults, when they turn 18, they're like, I'm 18, I can make all my own decisions. And, they think it's about curfew or, how they're going to spend their money. And all of that is true. But what they don't think about is, what if I can't make those decisions? Or what if I need help making those decisions? And they automatically assume, because we have been the one buying the helmets and putting the Band-Aids on, that, their parents or their guardians are going to be able to do that. And legally, we cannot. So once a person turns 18, they have full legal decision making. So because of that, we have to think about the what ifs. What if you can't? And there's two primary areas that we focus on. One is medical decisions, and two is financial decisions.
Yeah, so I'm going to stop you right there. So medical decisions and financial decisions. It's alarming just hearing this. I know it's factual, but it is absolutely alarming to know that, again, you and I'm going to make an assumption here that we're kind of part of like the helicopter parent generation, right? Maybe bordering on the bulldozing parent, which is, if you don't know what that is, the helicopter parent is like hovering above, making sure all the things are done. And I think that's been for a while now. As American parents, we're there, we're hovering. But we've progressed to bulldozing, which is literally being in a machine and clearing a path for our children. So we've had this delusion of control over so many processes in parenting, and to have it absolutely stop at 18 and not be able to make health decisions and financial decisions without engaging in legal documents it might be very surprising to some listeners.
In those scenarios where you have a helicopter or bulldoze parent, those young adults don't necessarily have the skills and the knowledge about their decision making, because it's always been done by the parent. And, for students going off to college, they can sign FERPA. And so the parents can talk to, the bursar's office about tuition and that type of thing. But that's only going to cover that very specific scenario. So every young adult should have a healthcare proxy, a HIPAA release, and a power of attorney.
Okay, so you mentioned the FERPA, which for those people who don't know, if you have a child going off to college, that is the release that you sign basically based on the financial contract that you have with the university or college, which allows you to pay. lucky parent, right? It allows you to pay and access the finances of that college student. There's another. So then you're just mentioned 3 documents in addition to kind of what they'll make you do at the bursar's office at the college. What are those 3 documents, and can you go through each of those?
Absolutely. So the first document is a healthcare proxy. And a healthcare proxy is a document which names an agent. That is the person that would be making your medical decisions for the young adult in the event that they are deemed incapacitated by a doctor. So it is based on incapacity. And so therefore, incapacity, a child could be incapacitated while they're in a coma, and the doctor will say they're incapacitated. They invoke the healthcare proxy, and your agent is making those decisions for you. Once the young adult has recovered from whatever event that is and recovered their capacity, they go back to making their own decision making. Now, unfortunately, there are circumstances where maybe that incapacity is going to remain permanent, and the healthcare agent would be making decisions permanently for that young adult. But capacity can toggle back and forth, and so that authority toggles back and forth. And the healthcare proxy is only if the child is unable to make a medical decision or unable to communicate a medical decision. So even if cognitively the young adult can, make a decision, but if they don't have the communication to convey that, then the agent is going to step in and make a decision.
Okay. So, I hate to make this real for listeners, but it helps to have an example. So let's just say I have a child in school in Virginia, and they get in a horrible accident and are not responsive, and I don't have this healthcare proxy. What happens? Do they even know that he's my child?
No, they don't. So in that case, you're going to have to go to court and get a guardianship to make medical decisions. So, and the guardianship, the court that has jurisdiction to make decisions regarding guardianships is where the person is. So if your child is down south in Georgia, you're going to have to navigate the Georgia court systems to get a guardianship so that you can make medical decisions and access your child's medical information. And even if your child is in Massachusetts, you've got to go through the Massachusetts court system. And when your, child is laying in a hospital bed and decisions need to be made, maybe not life or death decisions, because those are going to be made to, make sure that your child remains living, but other medical decisions that need to be made. And meanwhile, you're battling, not battling, but you're
navigating. Yeah.
Navigating the court system to get that guardianship to be able to help your child and make those decisions on behalf of your child. So it's time consuming, it's expensive, it's stressful when a parent is already under enough stress because, their child is in a precarious situation.
Okay, so for this document, how simple is it to obtain? And, through a lawyer, through the internet? Like, how do you tell a parent, how do you advise a parent to get this document in place?
Sure. So we have a young adult estate planning package, which consists of all the documents that we mentioned: the healthcare proxy, the HIPAA release, and the power of attorney. We prepare those documents. The young adult is the client. They need to parents need to understand that, especially helicopter or bulldoze parents, that the child is the client, even if they are, paying for the legal services. And so we sit down with the young adult and we explain each of these documents and who they think is best to fit each of these roles, because it may not necessarily be their parent. They have the ability to choose whoever they want to be making those decisions on their behalf.
Okay. And is the healthcare, you mentioned the two other documents, HIPAA and power of attorney. Can you go through those and say how they interconnect?
Sure. So the HIPAA release interconnects with the healthcare proxy. A HIPAA release is who is entitled to your protected medical information. So there's no decision making connected to the HIPAA release. That's the healthcare proxy. So on your HIPAA release, you're going to outline the people that have access to your protected medical information. Now, certainly your healthcare agents might be on there, but you may want to add somebody else. And the HIPAA release is helpful. So say, for example, you have a child that is away at college and they need help getting a prescription and you need to call their doctor's office, or you need to pick up medical records for your child. Unless there is a HIPAA release on file, the doctor's office is not going to release those records or information to you.
Right. That's actually happened to me. So, calling the doctor to make an appointment and realizing, oops, she just turned 18. And you have to get on the phone, I say to my daughter. But she was able to, through her portal, which many of us have, like these healthcare portals, she was able to sign that HIPAA on the portal. And so for that's pretty simple. Am I correct in thinking that? Okay, great. So the HIPAA.
Yes. So you can do that, but that means that for every provider that you have to go onto their portal and do a HIPAA release. So, and when you do a new HIPAA release, that trumps the last HIPAA release. So,
Okay.
And same thing with the healthcare proxy. So if you did a healthcare proxy, oftentimes when you go into the hospital for a procedure, they'll, hand you a 2-page document, says this is your healthcare proxy, sign this in case something goes wrong, who's going to make your decisions. If you then, and they're fine for that purpose. They're very bare bones. So our healthcare proxy is much more detailed, outlines other situations because we're lawyers. We think of all the what ifs. And so that healthcare proxy that you execute with us would then negate the one that you signed at the hospital. So it's better to have one document that is uniform with all of your providers.
Okay. And when you say with us, I mean, you have a specific, package at your law firm, but
Correct.
You're talking in general. Could you speak in generalities, like
yes.
with an attorney that does estate planning, those documents override the ones that you one-off sign if you have a procedure?
Correct.
Awesome. And then kind of like I feel like the mother of all documents when it comes to estate planning is maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but it feels like people talk about power of attorney a lot. So can you explain that document as well?
Yes. So the healthcare proxy and the HIPAA release are with respect to medical decisions. And as I said in the beginning, the power of attorney is with respect to financial decisions. And we do or attorneys typically do what's called a durable power of attorney. There is what's called the springing power of attorney, and that is depending on capacity, like the healthcare proxy. So if you were deemed incapacitated, it springs into place. Generally, attorneys have been getting away from that springing power of attorney and using what's called a durable power of attorney. Durable means that it takes effect immediately upon signing, because people most often have financial situations that they may want or need assistance with. and they're not necessarily incapacitated. So, for example, you may have an elderly parent that doesn't have any cognitive decline, but it's just overwhelming because it's online with bill pay and what have you. And so, if they have a power of attorney, their agent can assist them with those things. It's not because they're incapacitated. And so, for a young adult, it could be assistance with, opening bank accounts or managing accounts while they're away from school, away from home, or their student loans. If there's, a fraud alert on their phone about their bank account and they want their parent to call and handle that for them without a power of attorney, they can't do that. Now, I will caution you that, we prepared the power of attorney, and a document is only as good as the person receiving it. So some banks will accept the power of attorney that an attorney has prepared. Some banks have their own power of attorney. And so they will say, no, you need to sign ours specifically. And that's perfectly fine too. Again, because the important thing is to have one in place.
Okay. So how do you know if your bank will honor? It seems as though a legal document like a power of attorney would be honored. How do you know if the banks, and sometimes people have several banks, are honoring those?
When you receive your package, you get the original documents, and our guidance, we give guidance as to what to do with those original documents. And so with respect to the power of attorney, we tell clients you want to bring the original to your primary bank, have them make a copy. At that point, their legal department will usually review it and say, yes, we will honor this, or no, you need to sign ours. And you are going to have to file a copy of that power of attorney with any financial institutions that you do business with on a regular basis. I wouldn't file it, with the student loan company, but have it on hand. We provide our clients with an electronic copy. So if they need to email it off to a department, they can do that. But as far as your everyday banking, you should stop in and give them a copy and see if they will accept it or if they require their own.
Well, I imagine, you have to mitigate risk when you're looking at legal documents. And I can imagine that there are a lot of online opportunities to create these kind of documents. And of course, I'm sure some of them are legitimate and then some of them are not. How do you, as a consumer, of course, the ideal scenario would be to engage a lawyer in this kind of document. But, college in itself, raising a child in itself is expensive. College is an entire other expense. In order to, kind of do this in a cost-effective way, if you didn't want to engage an attorney, are there online opportunities that you've, I'm not asking you to name a specific one, but how do you know if it's legitimate or not?
There are some legitimate companies. I do caution people against getting their documents online. But there are some reputable companies, and you'll see these often mentioned in, the Facebook groups of, parents of college students. And so you can get a sense of what companies are reputable, and people usually stick to those one or two companies. I will caution people as well. We see this more with respect to wills when we do our estate planning, is that even if the document that you found online is compliant with Massachusetts law, sometimes, as with wills, there are specific requirements in executing that document that would make it valid or invalid. So even if in black and white it complies with Massachusetts law, if you don't execute it properly, it's not going to be valid. So I caution people against doing things online. And I know, as you said, college is expensive. I have a son that's a junior and a daughter that's a senior in high school. So, But I will say this, if you do not have these documents and you have to petition the court for a guardianship or a conservatorship, guardianship is for the medical decisions and conservatorship is for the financial decisions. If you have to petition the court for that, it can take several weeks and months. And also, it can be very expensive, at thousands of dollars. And so it is an investment, and it
Yeah.
may look very simple that it's just, 7 pieces of paper, but the value is in what those pieces of paper can do for you later on down the line.
Yes. So I had a guest on, Christopher Penn, last season, and he talked about AI, and it was illuminating about, the power of AI. But he also mentioned that when it comes to your health, the law, and your money, it's very important to check in with a human. And I think that in this case that, that's kind of what you're saying, that, you can use these online platforms as references, but really, do the research. And if you do get in touch with a human and to put you and your firm on the spot, but what is your range of price? Like, just give me a range of price that you would say, like, consumer protection, or, would say, like, this is how much this should cost you. Mm-hmm.
So, I do see costs online that are, could be $100 to $150. But again, that's just you printing it out. It's not anyone explaining to you when you will need it, where you should keep it, who you should give it to, what you should do with it. So that's part of the service that we provide as well. And so I know attorneys in the area, their young adult documents can range anywhere from, 500 to 700 within that range, because it does include an initial consultation where we, talk about these documents. We talk about who the young adult would want to name in these various roles, and we talk about why the documents are important. And then we prepare the documents, we send them to be reviewed, and then the client needs to come in to have those documents executed and notarized. So it's much more than just printing off the piece of paper. And so that's the difference in the cost.
This is a lot, because again, I feel like, everyone who's listening who has a kid turning 18, they're like, guess what you're getting for your birthday? Mm-hmm. You're getting a healthcare proxy. We're signing all these documents because it is so important. And, there are so many parent advocacy groups out there that I've read about who have unfortunately suffered a horrible, tragic situation where they weren't able to care for or get the information in time from their 18 plus, which, as we know as parents, they're 18 plus, but they're babies, they don't know. They need oversight in some of these scenarios, and to have these documents in place is a real gift. I'm just wondering, in your opinion, is there a lack of advocacy in this area?
I think so. And one of my goals is to really bring the need for these documents to light, because parents think about their own estate planning, but they don't think about estate planning for their young adults, because I think the common misconception is, well, I'm a young adult, I don't have any assets. What do I need to do an estate plan for?
Exactly. I think estate planning needs like a rebrand, because nobody, even adults, don't think they have an estate. Most of them,
right?
They think they have some things, or a house, but not an estate.
So, for example, during COVID, I was saying to people, even if you don't have an estate plan, you don't want to do an estate plan right now, please just execute a healthcare proxy, whether it's with me or someone else. I don't care, but you need to have a healthcare proxy, because people were going from being fine to incapacitated within 3 days, and they didn't have anything on record. So that it's really important to get that out there, that people need to execute these documents. It is important to get the word out that these documents are necessary for everyone, but particularly to educate young adults, because they just don't know what they don't know.
Having the onus be on the 18-year-old at that point, as they are thrust into independence, is kind of revealing and poignant in a way, because it is the beginning of their independence. And this is an opportunity for them to assert that, to acknowledge it, to come face to face with their parent and, and make a decision about their life, which many of them really, let's face it, might not have felt like they've been in control of a lot of the decisions they'd made so far. So it's really interesting. And I think it's also interesting, too, because it gets families talking about life and death, and which is inevitable. Nobody wants to talk about it. And I had Cameron Huddleston on this podcast talking about the uncomfortable conversations that we need to have with our aging parents, and that she's had with her teenage kids about their end of life choices. And this goes hand in hand with that because, again, it isn't fun. It's not the Friday night pizza. It's not, the trip to Aruba or, anything, or a barbecue in the backyard. This is a conversation that needs to be had that could have dire circumstances if it's not had. Yet, again, it's not commonly talked about. And I love that you sent me that email, Suzanne, because at Rockland Trust, we have comprehensive estate planning and services that these documents can be a part of. Other banks have that too. Other attorneys, other financial institutions, they're everywhere. The access to these documents and this information is prevalent. But at the same time, I think we put up the barriers. We don't want to look at this because it's scary. And it means our kids are growing up. It means we're getting older. It means tragedies can happen. And the fact that you brought up COVID, I think, is really important, too, because I think COVID put a spotlight on a lot of things we don't want to look at. And we were forced to look at them because we had nowhere to go. But, this is one of them. The other is like the need for an emergency fund in case of those, instances where we suddenly don't have a job or are furloughed and things like that. So as we've gotten back to living our lives over these last, 5 or 6 years, I think it's important to take these moments to really examine where we are in our lives, where our children are, where our parents are, and investigate these legal documents that could really be life-changing. Well, I do have some rapid fire questions for you to behind the curtain, Money Made Simple rapid fire questions. So let's see if we can get through some of these. Okay, Suzanne, what is your favorite word?
Coffee.
What is your least favorite word?
My least favorite word is moist.
Oh, that's a terrible word.
Yeah.
What is your favorite? What is your theme song, like your walk-up song?
I'm Still Standing by Elton John.
Good one. What gets you motivated to do the work that you do?
My clients. I see what happens on the other end because I do probate administration and probate litigation. I see what happens on the other end when someone passes away and they don't have a proper estate plan. And their loved ones are left behind and they're grieving and trying to get through the legal process. So that's my motivation when I get up every day to do this. And my motivation with respect to young adults is because now I have young adults. My 2 kids, the day they turned 18, they signed their documents, but others are not, so informed.
That's great. What keeps you from doing the work that you do?
I think just the state of the world at the moment is distracting for everyone. But I try to stay focused when I'm in the office to not engage in what's going on in the outside world and stay focused on what's going on here in the office.
That's good because you can make a lot of difference in the work that you do. What is money advice that you would like to erase from your memory? Some bad advice you got?
The bad money piece for me is really connected to estate planning in a way that someone has a will, they think, oh, I have a will, I'm all set. if you have a will, you're going to have to go through probate. Any assets that are held, including money, bank accounts, anything that's held in your name individually is going to have to go through the probate court, and that goes through your will. So people think, oh, I have a will, I'm all set. You have a will, you're going to have to go through probate, which takes at least a year. Creditors have a year to make a claim against the estate. So that has to stay open. No distributions get made. It's a long, drawn out, expensive process, again, while your loved ones are grieving. So the misconception is, oh, I have a will, I'm good to go, when there may be other tools to put those assets in the name of other legal entities in order to avoid probate.
Great. And what is some money advice that you received that you wish you had learned earlier?
I think just in general regarding investing and understanding all that. And that's why I think it's important that we have programs to educate young adults regarding investing. I know my daughter right now is taking consumer math, and they're doing, their assignments are about credit cards and interest rates and, which do you pay off? And here's your budget. And this is coming out for taxes. And, so I think those type of things are important, and investing in general. I didn't come from a family that had a financial background. So I didn't gain that knowledge early in my life. And I think it's important for young adults to understand that sooner rather than later.
I agree. I think the magic of compound interest should be taught right away because it is, young people have the most time, and that's a factor. And it's kind of amazing to look at the results. So I agree with that one. Lastly, give our listeners a challenge. What's something that they could do or start today that would change their financial lives?
I think it starts with having honest conversations, honest conversation with yourself about what your financial situation is. I think a misconception is people think, oh, I don't have a lot of assets, so I don't need an estate plan, or I don't need a financial advisor because I don't have that much. And I think it's actually more important when you don't have that much to seek those professionals, because you've got to protect what you have and hopefully get it to grow.
I think that's great advice. Thank you, Suzanne. This has been so great. Again, this is Suzanne Bunszel from SKB Attorneys, and where she's a partner. And she's just really illustrated the importance of having documents for your 18 plus year old children, that healthcare proxy, the HIPAA, the power of attorney, all the things that will protect your greatest asset, which is your grown children. So I just appreciate you bringing this to light today, Suzanne. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Julie. I appreciate the opportunity to educate. I love educating the public, and especially educating young adults regarding the importance of having these documents. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for tuning in to Behind the Curtain, Money Made Simple. If you liked what you heard, if you learned something, subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend, because good financial education deserves a standing ovation. And remember, you don't have to know all the steps before you take the stage. You just need the courage to show up, ask questions, and maybe, just maybe, sing a little bit along the way. I'm Julie Beckham, and Behind the Curtain, Money Made Simple is brought to you by Rockland Trust, member FDIC. The bank where each relationship matters, because we want you to have a healthy relationship with money at any age.